Hi y'all, and welcome to this video sit down chat with me in the garden. Today we are going to be discussing some of my fall bulb order that I'm going to be planting in the coming weeks. The temperatures have dropped substantially. We're having lows in our 40s. I haven't checked the forecast over the next couple weeks, but Ohio weather is so unpredictable. I'm not going to be planting these items yet. I'll probably wait 2-ish weeks at least until we get our way into mid-October before I start putting bulbs on the ground. If I don't, these things could start coming up and that would be a problem. So this isn't a design video of where these bulbs are going to be going. I will think about shooting one of those later as I start putting some of these in the ground. I do have a number of them. So what I've purchased are several different varieties of daffodils, a selection of hyacinth, and then a woodland blend mix that I'm going to be adding under one of my maple trees that I think will look really nice, and maybe potentially some under the willow behind me in the spring as these items come up. I do not have any tulips on this order. One of the primary reasons for that is I am not ready for tulips in my garden. Tulips here do not tend to return very well in my personal garden. A lot of people use tulips for annuals. You know, I'm not a big proponent of annuals in the garden because that's a multiple expense every year. If annuals weren't expensive to begin with, buying bulbs and spending that effort planting them the fall before just to have to pull them up in like April or May around here is not ideal for me. So I may add tulips to my garden in the future. That might be something that I put exclusively in containers. I do have some Darwin tulips that I purchased from Lowe's several years ago that have been in the garden that have kind of came back sporadically here and there. I may actually consider removing those fully in the spring when they come up, solely because I'm having issues with them being so sporadic. Now they're interfering with existing designs in my garden. So I need to get those up and replace them with either daffodils in those locations or just not put any bulbs in those spots. And so I've had viewers comment before that I don't have any bulbs in the back garden, which is what I've been showing a lot on my channel over the past year because this has been the renovation space that I've been focusing on. The reason for that is because you typically put bulbs in your garden last, and so you start with trees, you move to shrubs, perennials, annuals, and bulbs. Bulbs are typically something last because it's not something you want to be one, spending the money on, and two, putting in just to have to dig up later. So to the extent that I have room and empty areas in the garden this fall, that's where I'm probably going to place most of these bulbs. Another reason I haven't put a whole lot of bulbs in my garden is because I don't love how the foliage hangs over, which that's something I'm going to have to get used to with all of these daffodils. We have a really cold winter, and then we tend to warm up really quickly, which makes the bulbs, the perennials, spring out of the ground, and so I'm left with a spring garden that is a mix really of bulbs and perennials. There's not like a separate season here that I've experienced, and there might be with some of these bulbs that bloom earlier that I'm going to show you, but there's not a separate season where there's like a bulb season. The hellebores tend to bloom in February and March, so that's nice before the perennials get up and running, but a lot of the perennials in my garden will start kind of emerging depending on the weather in late March and then continue through April. Around the same time a lot of the bulbs I have in my garden now are coming out. So we're just going to jump into it. I'm not going to show you the hyacinths. In full disclosure, I purchased these from ColorBlends. These were not sent to me. One of the hyacinth bulbs was rotted when it arrived and there was a gnat situation going on. So I removed that bulb from the packaging and threw it away. So that was one of the, I think it was a 25 pack that I just won't have. Another reason is because hyacinths, for some reason, cause some people to itch excessively if they're exposed to the bulb. And just me removing the hyacinths from the package in these little containers or bags right here, I was itching really bad and I had to wash my arms, and so I wasn't going to bring it back out for this video and just create an itching issue for me again. So we'll go over the daffodils first. One of the reasons I ordered from ColorBlends is because I've seen a lot of other YouTubers order from ColorBlends and the bulb size is really nice. Typically when I purchase bulbs locally at Lowe's or a garden center, they're typically smaller. ColorBlends has some really large bulbs, and they were so big when they arrived that I was like, oh my gosh, these are going to be difficult to install because they were so big, but I want that impact earlier. ColorBlends prices are also pretty good, I think. I think they kind of consider them a wholesaler, but to the consumer. So check them out. What I would recommend if you are wanting to order from ColorBlends is to make your list this fall to the extent something's not available, and then order them as soon as the store opens in late spring, early summer. If you don't, a lot of these varieties, or a lot of varieties that are really popular, sell out and then you won't have them. So some of the varieties I'm showing you today may be sold out and not available if you want them. My recommendation is to make that list this winter when you're daydreaming about your garden in the future, which is what I did. I still waited too long to order some stuff and some things were sold out. So don't be Matthew. Order them as soon as possible. That way you can get what your heart desires. So the first thing we're going to go over is 𝗖𝗢𝗨𝗖𝗢𝗘𝗢. 𝗖𝗢𝗨𝗍s are a white with yellow daffodil. I will put pictures on the screen. I don't know a whole lot about bulbs to begin with, but I just am showing you what I ordered just in case you're interested in duplicating some of that. So I'm going to actually open this so you can see the bulb size on some of these daffodils, because I think that's really important when you're looking at purchasing bulbs. And so this right here, you can see how large that daffodil bulb is. In the palm of my hand, it takes up, you know, a good size of the palm. That's a really good size daffodil bulb. And a lot of these bulbs are that size. The hyacinth bulbs, although I don't have them to show you, were a similar size as this one I just showed you. So also really nice size. The next one is Topsy Turvy. ColorBlends does offer some bulbs in multiple sizes, so if you want to save a little money and get a bigger quantity of bulbs, I wasn't interested in that. I was mostly interested in the bigger blooms and immediate impact, but if you're on a budget, that's certainly something to consider with some of the varieties that are more popular. They have the smaller sizes available. Topsy Turvy, also a really nicely sized bulb. I got 25 of these, so a lot of their bulbs come in 25 packs, particularly the daffodils. Some varieties are limited to really large quantities, and that wasn't something I wanted to focus on this year. But in the future, it might be something I add as I find out what daffodils work well for me. So Topsy Turvy is a white with yellow and apricot, a really interesting daffodil that kind of screams Matthew. I do love double blooms. The issue with some double blooms is they tend to not hold up very well and they want to fall over. I'm not sure if I will experience that issue with Topsy Turvy or any of these. I do have a few doubles and daffodils in my garden that I purchased locally in years past, and I do have that issue with them falling over. So I'm going to try and give these a location that get enough sun, so maybe that won't happen. All the previous daffodils I planted have been in the front garden, and they get morning sunlight through lunchtime, and after that time they kind of don't get as much. And so I'm hoping if I give them enough sun, they will hold themselves up a little better. The next variety is Charm Offensive, and it is a white with a soft yellow. Also a really nice bulb size, although it is slightly smaller. So let me show you that right quick. You can see here the size of this one, a little smaller than the last couple of them. I then picked a variety, which I think this is a newer variety that may have been released by them just this year, and it is called Golden Delicious. And the bulbs are smaller, I think, because it's a newer variety, and they probably have to increase their stock before they grow it on. But this is a more typical yellow daffodil. My grandmother in Alabama always called them buttercups, and I don't know if that's a regional thing. But I always grew up knowing them as buttercups, and I think it's because they were that buttery yellow color. So if you're from Alabama or the South or in a region where you referred to daffodils as buttercups, let me know, because that would be really interesting. But this is the size of the Golden Delicious here. You can see a little smaller size there, but also still a really nice size for a daffodil bulb. The last daffodil that I have for you is called 𝗩𝗜𝗚𝗚𝗘𝗢, I believe is how it's pronounced. I will put that on the screen, but it is also a yellow daffodil that blooms earlier. It gets 16 to 18 inches tall, and it says to plant these 4 inches apart. And so these are also really, really nice sized daffodil bulbs here. You can see what the quality there looks like. Really impressed with the size of these. This is really the first time I've ordered bulbs online. Like I mentioned, I don't have the hyacinths to show you. They're still in my garage, so they're getting sufficient airflow, and I didn't want to start that whole itchy mess with me. But that color is called Gypsy Queen, and it's a beautiful apricot color. I love that coral apricot color in the garden, and I don't have any other hyacinths in the garden. So I imagine some of those are going to make their way out front. I have 24 of them now, and then probably some of them out back, because hyacinths do have a really nice but also strong smell. So I'll try and place them somewhat close to the door and the entrance to the patio, but far enough away where it's not too overpowering. The last two sets of bulbs that I got is a snowdrop. I chose to do snowdrops this year. I'm also interested in the future adding snowflakes, but snowflakes tend to be a much larger plant, and I didn't want to necessarily dedicate that space this year and have to worry about moving them. And so I want to make sure that the garden is more settled in before I add any bulbs that get larger and become larger plants. So the snowdrops are interesting because they bloom really early. So I'm thinking about incorporating some of these along with my hellebores. And so they will bloom very early, probably February to March. And it's just nice to have a little hint of white in the garden, dusting along with any snow we might have up here in the frigid Ohio weather sometimes. And so there are 100 of these snowdrops. The bulbs are really small, so they'll be pretty easy to plant, and then I can tuck those here and there because they are just tiny, tiny little things that are real cute in late winter. And the last set is a blend, and it's called their Woodland blend, and I picked it because it has lots of interesting colors. There's some blues, some purplish pinks, some yellows, and it's just a mix of like crocus and some smaller tiny daffodils that stay really small. And this is one I'm thinking about adding along pathways. So under the moon gate, that stone pathway I have there, the pathway into the garden from the side yard, the pathway to the shed, places that I would typically add ground covers to fill in all those cracks. This is the blend that I'm going to be adding there because a lot of these bulbs are tiny. And so we probably have some daffodils here that are this size, but there's also these that are real small, and then some bulbs that are smaller still. And so the blends are really nice. It's a total of 200 bulbs of variety of different flowers. And so those will be really interesting to add into those locations. Probably some also behind me here where I've kind of created this little woodland border next to the bench that you may have seen in some garden tours or videos. And that is the extent to my bulb purchase this year. And those few bags equal 450 bulbs. And so this is going to take me a while to get through. It doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it quickly adds up. And so how I'm going to be planting those is the Pro Plugger that I've showed on videos before that I really love for planting plugs of plants. It also works really good for bulbs. It has this depth adjuster. It comes with 2 discs, and so you can do like 3 inches, 4 inches, and remove the disc to do even deeper if you need to. It goes really easy into the soil. The plugs stack up in the hollow tube here, and then you dump it out as you go along, and you can just pack these plugs of soil back on top of the bulbs when you're done. For the bigger bulbs that might have issues fitting into that hole, including some of the biggest daffodils, I may be using the power planter, which I also really love. Helps me get through some of my clay soil. Both tools work really well. Kind of partial in some instances to the Pro Plugger because it doesn't make as much of a mess, but to the extent there's anything bigger needed. You can also do multiple holes next to each other with the Pro Plugger to kind of create a larger hole, but sometimes it's quicker to use another tool. And so otherwise, both great tools. The auger, of course, comes in several different sizes. I have links to those below if you're interested. So thank you guys for joining me for this little bulb video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let you know what I'm going to be planting this fall. Check out ColorBlends. I think they still have a great variety and selection available, and to the extent they don't, go ahead and make your list this fall and winter for next spring and summer. Thank you guys for following along, and remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care, everyone. Bye.